Okay, next up we have another comedian for you. Her name is Sarah Stewart, and she will be telling us some ghost stories. I will set up the stage. Sarah Stewart, everybody!
Before I start, I just need to give you a little warning that this story has a dark theme, and we will be talking about the murder of a child. If anybody feels they need to leave at any time, don't leave. My first memory of anything supernatural happening in my life was when I was 5. When I was little, I lived in a farm called Westcott in Somerset, England. My family were farmers. Our nearest village was Brompton Rolfe. Now, it was just over a kilometre down the road, but it felt like miles and miles away to me as a child. We didn't have much of a social life because Mum and Dad worked long hours on the farm. But we did have one regular visitor, Mrs Buttle. Now, I don't know how she became a family friend. She was obviously a rich old lady because she had a huge detached house in the village, but was always very dark inside and freezing cold. And she had loads of cats. I used to dread it when Mum told us Mrs Buttle was coming. There was something about her I just didn't like. To be honest, frightened me a little. She had long, lank, greasy hair and a horrible smell, probably from all those bloody cats. She had a very posh voice with a bit of a lisp. It would never have surprised me if she turned up on a broom wearing a witch's hat. When I was 5, I started school, which was at another village called Lydiard St Lawrence, which was about 6 miles away. I had to catch the bus to school, which picked me up outside the church in Brompton. So I would walk from the farm to the village. Now, I know it was only a kilometre, but it was a long walk for a little girl, down a very steep hill and back up the other side. I hated it. One day I set off and was walking down the hill, and a car pulled up beside me. The man driving the car asked me where I was going. I explained I was walking to catch the bus to school. He asked me if I wanted a lift, and the answer was a fervent yes, please. I got into the car, and the man drove me into the village and dropped me off outside the church just in time to catch the bus. I didn't think anything more about it because the school day had started. But as the day went by, I started to hear a voice. A woman's voice. A posh voice with a funny inflection. And it kept saying, "When you go home this afternoon on the school bus and get off in the village, do not get into the car with the man." The voice sounded as if it was coming from behind me, but every time I looked around, there was no one there. At 3 o'clock, school finished for the day, and I caught the bus home. I got off when we arrived at Brompton, and there, waiting for me, was the man. I know I was only 5, but I started to feel that something was wrong. I felt goosebumps on my arms, getting them now, and was overcome by a very strong wave of anxiety. I started to walk home, and the man drove up beside me and asked me if I wanted a lift. I desperately wanted to say yes, but I kept remembering what the voice said to me: "Do not get in the car with the man." So I said no and kept walking down the side of the hill and back up again toward the farm. He waited a while and drove up beside me again and asked me again if I wanted a lift. I said no. This went on for a few times until eventually I made it to the gate that led directly to the farm, and I ran the rest of the way home. That evening I told my mum what had happened, and the next day Dad drove me to the village to catch the bus. As we turned out of the drive, Dad saw the man parked just a little way up the hill, waiting for me. Dad phoned the police, but they couldn't do anything because, of course, the man had done nothing wrong. I never saw the man again. 2 years ago, I had a trip back to the UK and stayed with Mum and Dad for a while. They're in their late 80s now. We were having a reminisce about the old times, the farm, Brompton Rolfe, and Mrs Buttle. And I reminded Mum about what I called my near kidnapping. And she told me something I'd never heard before. That several months after the occasion with me, the man abducted and murdered a child. Mum told me, "I've never forgotten that incident with you because it happened the day after Mrs Buttle had died." To this day, I believe the voice I heard was of Mrs Buttle, who had not passed into the other side until she saved me from what could have been a horrific death. I do not know to this day what our connection was. I do have one beautiful memory of a visit, of her sitting with me on the front lawn teaching me to make daisy chains. I've never heard or felt her since that day. So, did she leave once she knew I was safe? Or is she still looking after me like a guardian angel? If she continues to be my unseen protector, what else has she saved me from over the years? I think I'd rather not know. Thank you, everybody.
Sarah Stewart, everybody!